My name is Claire Anderson, and tonight, the skyline of Manhattan glitters outside my office window like 1,000 flashing camera bulbs. It should feel like triumph. CBS, the three letters I dreamed about since I was 21, are finally etched onto my business card. The heavy glass doors of this newsroom now swing open at my ID swipe. The hum of printers, the muted shuffle of reporters, the faint buzz of the city below. It's all mine. I worked for this. I bled for this. And yet, as I lean back in my chair, smoothing down the silk blouse I bought secondhand but still makes me feel powerful, my phone buzzes across the desk.
Mom.
I almost let it go to voicemail, but habit wins. I answer. Her voice is sharp, laced with that familiar blend of disappointment and accusation.
So this is it?
You just leave? After 5 years of paying your sister's rent, you finally get your big job and decide you're too good for us. I freeze. For a moment, I think I misheard her. My success, this miracle I clawed my way toward, is being twisted into selfishness. I bite the inside of my cheek, steadying my voice. Pride, hurt, and an ironic sort of anger battle in my chest. Because no matter how high I climb, it seems my family only sees the girl who stayed behind to pick up the pieces. 5 years earlier, I was 23 and terrified. My paycheck from the coffee shop barely covered groceries, let alone the overdue bills piling up on the kitchen counter. Yet every month, without fail, I wrote a check for my sister Emily's rent. She was still finding herself, as my parents liked to say, which somehow translated to me being the one plugging the financial holes. I remember one night clearly. I sat at our wobbly kitchen table, the one we dragged in from a thrift store, counting wrinkled bills like they were precious artifacts. My hands shook as I scraped together just enough for Emily's landlord. My own landlord could wait, apparently. That lump in my throat felt permanent, lodged somewhere between duty and despair. What cut deeper than the empty wallet was the silence. My parents never asked how I was doing. They never asked if I was eating, if I was sleeping, if I could breathe under the weight of it all. Their words were always the same. Claire, you're responsible. You'll figure it out. Like responsibility was some kind of endless well I could draw from without ever running dry. The only person who seemed to see me was my grandmother. She lived in a modest retirement home outside Boston, and whenever I visited, she'd tuck small treasures into my bag. Once, it was a silver pen, engraved with delicate swirls. Your words will take you farther than money ever will, she told me, her eyes sharp despite the wrinkles. I didn't understand then how much I'd cling to those words. That winter, after another shouting match with my parents, them insisting Emily needed me begging for just a sliver of acknowledgement, I made a choice. I packed in my tiny apartment, kissed Grandma on the cheek, and boarded a bus bound for New York City. I had no job waiting, no savings cushion, just a burning need to prove I could be more than the family's safety net. The bus rattled through the night, and I remember gripping that silver pen like it was a sword. For the first time in years, the tears running down my face weren't from defeat. They were from resolve. New York was loud, brutal, and unwelcoming at first. I arrived with 2 suitcases, a notebook, and Grandma's silver pen rattling in my bag. Rent was a monster. I fought monthly with the scraps I made from waitressing double shifts at a diner on 8th Avenue. My shoes wore thin, my back ached, and still, every month, I mailed Emily's landlord a check. I told myself it was temporary, that once she got on her feet, I could finally breathe. But the truth was, she never stood up. And I never stopped kneeling. Still, I had a dream. Journalism. Stories had always been my oxygen, and Manhattan was supposed to be the place where they mattered. I applied to internships that paid in experience, sent articles to magazines that ghosted me, and typed until my fingers cramped. Nights bled into mornings at my tiny walk-up apartment, where cockroaches scuttled across the floor and the radiator banged like it was angry at me. It would have been easy to give up.
Some nights, I almost did.
I'd stare at the cracked ceiling and wonder if my parents were right, if maybe my role in life was just to carry everyone else. But then I'd take out Grandma's pen, roll it between my fingers, and remember her voice. Your words will take you farther than money ever will. My first break came in the form of rejection. Hundreds of them. Then one tiny yes. A small online blog published my piece on New York's night shift workers. The paycheck was laughable, but when I saw my byline, my heart raced. My words weren't just mine anymore. They belonged to the world. That's when I met Margaret Hughes, a seasoned journalist with streaks of silver in her hair and a reputation for breaking stories that shook the city. She found me scribbling notes in the diner during a late shift, asked what I was writing, and didn't laugh when I showed her. Instead, she read every line. "You've got grit," she said. "Don't waste it." Margaret became my mentor, guiding me through the ruthless world of journalism. She taught me to ask better questions, to push harder, to never apologize for being ambitious. She pulled me into projects that stretched me raw, projects where editors raised their brows and said, "Are you sure she's ready?" Margaret always answered, "She'll learn." And I did. Slowly. Painfully. There were nights I stumbled home at 3 a.m., heels in hand, mascara smudged, crying from exhaustion. I'd microwave ramen, balance my laptop on my knees, and write until sunrise. Every small win, a retweet from a city council member, an editor's grudging compliment, a byline on a mid-tier site, was fuel. Through it all, I kept my success hidden from my family. When my parents called, I downplayed everything. "I'm managing," I'd say. "Things are fine." I never told them about the rejections or the tiny triumphs, or how my stories were slowly getting noticed. I didn't want their disapproval poisoning the fragile fire I was building. Years passed, and then the day came. The CBS offer letter. My hands shook as I read it. A permanent position. A salary that meant security. Validation. I sat alone in my apartment, holding the silver pen, tears streaking my cheeks. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had finally stepped into my own story. The first time my parents came to visit me after I started at CBS, I almost canceled. Part of me still wanted to hide, to keep my two worlds separate. But another part, the part that had carried their burdens for 5 years, was done hiding. If they were going to see me, they were going to see all of me. When they knocked on the door of my Manhattan apartment, I let them stand in the hallway for a beat longer than necessary. I wanted them to feel the weight of the anticipation. Finally, I opened the door. "Claire," Mom said, her eyes flicking over my outfit, a fitted blazer, dark jeans, heels that clicked confidently against the hardwood floor. Dad's gaze swept past me, landing on the space behind. Their expressions shifted, just slightly. The apartment wasn't extravagant, but it was mine, and every inch spoke of my journey. Framed articles lined one wall, my bylines visible in black ink. A bouquet of lilies sat on the table, sent by Margaret after my first broadcast segment. My desk by the window held both a stack of notebooks and Grandma's silver pen, polished and gleaming in the afternoon light. Emily trailed in behind them, her expression a mix of curiosity and something darker. She'd expected, I realized, a cramped apartment, maybe evidence that I was still struggling without her. Instead, she was met with clean lines, quiet elegance, and the hum of success. The silence stretched. "This is nice," Dad said finally, his voice almost grudging. I smiled, though it didn't reach my eyes. "It's home." We sat down, the air thick with unspoken words. Emily picked at her nails. Mom stared at the flowers like they were suspicious. I waited. I knew what was coming. And then, as predictable as the ticking of a clock, Mom leaned forward. "Claire, we need to talk. Your sister is having trouble again. Rent, bills, you know how it is. And now that you're settled." I laughed. A sharp, unexpected sound that made them blink. "Settled." I repeated. "Do you know what it took to get here? Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed for this settled life you think I just stumbled into?" Their eyes narrowed, defensive walls going up. But I didn't stop. "For 5 years," I said, voice steady now, "I paid Emily's rent. Every month I bled myself dry so she wouldn't get evicted. Do you know how many meals I skipped? How many nights I cried myself to sleep because I couldn't afford heat, but I still mailed that check. Emily flushed, her mouth opening, but no words came out. And when I finally got the job of my dreams, you called me selfish. Selfish, because I stopped carrying the weight you all piled onto me. The room fell silent. The only sound was the distant hum of traffic below. I let them sit in that silence, let them taste it. You want to know the truth? I said, leaning forward. I'm not selfish. I'm free. For the first time in my life, I'm living for me. And if that makes you uncomfortable, that's your problem, not mine. Their shock was almost tangible, filling the room like static. Dad looked down at his hands. Mom's lips trembled, caught between anger and shame. Emily's eyes darted everywhere but mine. I stood, smoothing my blazer, my heels clicking against the floor. This, I said, gesturing to the framed articles, the flowers, the pen on my desk, is who I am now. You can accept it, or you can leave. But I will not apologize for finally standing on my own. For the first time, they had no words. And for the first time, I didn't need them to. I didn't sit back down right away. I wanted them to feel the shift, that this time, I wasn't the one waiting for their approval. I was the one deciding how this conversation would go. Emily finally spoke, her voice small but defensive. You don't understand, Claire.
Things are harder for me.
I can't just. You can't just what? I cut in, my voice sharper than I intended. You can't just try? You can't just show up to a job interview on time, or finish the classes you keep starting and quitting. You can't take responsibility for your own life without me footing the bill. Her cheeks flushed crimson. That's not fair. I softened, but only slightly. What's not fair is that I sacrificed years of my life to keep you comfortable while I lived on ramen and anxiety. What's not fair is that I worked myself to the bone, and every time I called home, nobody asked how I was doing, just if I'd sent the check. Dad shifted uncomfortably. We only wanted you to look out for each other. And I did, I said firmly. For 5 years, I did. But looking out for each other goes both ways. You asked me to hold everyone up, but when I was falling apart, where were you? The silence after my question was deafening. I took a breath, steadying myself. So here's how it's going to be from now on. Emily, if you want my help, it won't come in the form of rent money. It'll come in the form of advice, connections, maybe even a resume review. But you're going to work. You're going to stand on your own 2 feet. Because I will not let you drag me back into the role of caretaker while you stand still. Emily's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. I turned to my parents. And as for you, I need you to understand something. Success doesn't make me selfish. Choosing myself after years of sacrifice doesn't make me cruel. If you want a relationship with me moving forward, you will respect the life I've built. No more guilt trips. No more calling me heartless when I don't bend to every demand. You either see me as an equal, or you don't see me at all. Mom blinked, stunned, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to protest, but couldn't find the words. Dad looked older suddenly, his shoulders sagging under the weight of truth he couldn't deny. I sat back down then, my voice quieter but no less firm. I love you all. That hasn't changed. But love without respect is just control. And I refuse to be controlled anymore. For the first time in years, I saw something flicker in Emily's eyes. Not entitlement, not resentment, but maybe recognition. Recognition that I wasn't her safety net anymore, and if she wanted to survive, she'd have to weave her own. And for the first time in my parents' silence, I heard not disappointment, but the faintest crack of understanding. In the weeks that followed, the air between us was tense, but different. My parents still called, though their tone had softened. They asked questions they'd never asked before, about my work, my long hours at CBS, the people I was meeting. The questions were clumsy, but they were a start. Emily was the biggest surprise. For the first time in years, she didn't ask for money. Instead, she sent me a text one morning. Got an interview today. Wish me luck. I stared at the screen for a long time, heart swelling with a mix of pride and relief. Maybe she would stumble. Maybe she would fail a few times. But at least she was trying. One evening, after a long day at the studio, I sat at my desk with the city lights sprawling beyond the window. The silver pen lay beside my keyboard, polished smooth from years of nervous fidgeting. I picked it up, rolling it between my fingers, and thought of Grandma's voice. "Your words will take you farther than money ever will." She had been right. My words had carried me through rejections, through loneliness, through nights of hunger and fear. They had carried me all the way to this office, this city, this life I had built with my own hands. But more than that, my words had finally carried me to freedom. Freedom from expectations that nearly broke me. Freedom from being defined only by what I gave up for others. I glanced around the room, at the framed articles, the flowers, the photos, the pen, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove anything to anyone. Not to my parents. Not to Emily. Not even to myself. I leaned back in my chair, smiling softly as the hum of the newsroom faded into the background. I thought of the years I had spent being the safety net, the endless sacrifices no one acknowledged, the exhaustion of always being the one who figured it out. And then I thought of now, of the woman I had become.
Strong.
Independent.
Whole.
The final thought settled in my chest like a quiet triumph, perfect for a voiceover, clear and unshakable. For years, I paid my sister's rent and carried my family's weight. But the day I chose myself, I wasn't selfish. I was finally free.